And we are back. It's the Kinner and Kev Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. Kinner and Kev Show, we are live on 1410 ESPN Radio and, of course, on the Chatterbox Sports Network YouTube channel, so make sure you go and check that out. I also made sure we were just live on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page. So, again, for all those who are used to watching the show on that outlet, make sure you go and take advantage of that nonetheless. So, but let's see. Where are we going to pick up with? Yes, the Women's Final Four.
Indeed.
Women's Championship over the weekend. And what's wild about everything that happened there. So ESPN with Iowa and UConn's Final Four matchup, that was the network's most watched basketball game ever. Men or women's, pro or collegiate. They've had the NBA on their network since 2002. And I'm doing something that I hate. I'm doing something I fell for it right off the bat. Here's what I'm getting tired of when it comes to anytime we talk women's basketball. And I say we, I just mean anyone in general. Why does it automatically have to go into, well, the men's game is this, or it's more interesting than the men's game? It's not doing it any favors when you're constantly comparing it to the men's game, because then what you end up doing is you push people away because the people that aren't giving women's sports a chance, they're mocking that to begin with and all that. Well, if it wasn't for Caitlin Clark, and maybe that is the case, I don't know. We'll get to the Caitlin Clark effect coming up here in a moment, because that was a very weird dynamic over the weekend that really pissed me off, to be quite honest with you. We'll get to that. But I want to talk about that Final Four matchup between UConn and Iowa. I know that was a few days ago. There's already been a champion crowned, and, congratulations, South Carolina, Don Staley, obviously, Dayton's own Breece Hall. I mean, just Breece Hall was unbelievable, Kev. I mean, she had for one, it was kind of just cool from Dayton, Ohio, getting to hear the starting lineups and all that. And she had the tough task of having to try and stop Caitlin Clark, who she got 2 fouls early in that championship game, of course, and then went to the bench, came back, did a much better job. Clark had 18 in the first quarter and really never got going again, only 12 points the rest of the way. But the finish to that UConn-Iowa game.
Mm-hmm.
For one, I thought it was cool, and now I see why it was so loud on social media. All right, 14 million people watched that game. 14 million people were tuned in from the tip to the very end. At times, it looked like UConn was going to rout Iowa. There were some very weird stretches early on where they started to kind of pull away, and I'm like, man, Iowa just can't get it going. Caitlin Clark, I guess, had 40 straight games of 20 or more. That looked like that was in jeopardy until she kind of got hot late in that game. But the play that had everyone talking about, the call that had everyone talking, was the moving screen at the very end. And I know I'm guessing me and you are on opposite sides on this, but this goes back to the Cincinnati Bengals Super Bowl years ago. This goes back to the Chiefs and the Eagles Super Bowl from 2 years ago. And there is this thing that people have made up. And I went, and I have a lot of friends who are officials. And I said, I got a question for you. A foul's a foul, right? And they said, yes. I go, is there this, people have this imaginary rule that you don't call that there. And I get why people say that, and I understand why people say that, but I'm here to tell you, that's not a thing. That's what you prefer. That's what you want. That's not a thing. That damn girl was still sliding her back foot, all right? She leaned into her. She extended her arm and pushed her out. Paige Becker was to blame as well. I had a coach text me as well and say, hey, everyone's going to blame the official, but it's also on Paige Becker because she does not do a good job. Like this, talking about Caitlin Clark is one of the best compared to Reggie Miller as far as how she utilizes screens. Rip Hamilton, the way Caitlin Clark, I know she can hit shots from far back. Watch her off the ball when she's running off screens. She runs off those screens tight, shoulder to shoulder, so she could set up the screen so the defender is having to try to fight through it. Paige was horrible at that. Paige was looping all the way around, and really that's what forced her, the big girl, to have to go and step out to make that screen, which ultimately led to that back foot dragon and everything else. The bottom line is I am so nauseated of hearing people say you don't call that there. Since when, if there's a foul, do you not call it there? And it was actually, depending on the angle you looked at, the angle that I found that I put on the Facebook page, it was pretty damn obvious. I mean, that was as obvious. That was as obvious of a moving screen. That's textbook moving screen if there was one. I just can't believe that, and yet Diana Taurasi, who I am now officially a big non-fan of, as well as Breanna Stewart and everybody else. Oh, I'm gonna pick Iowa to win the national championship because everything's going their way, as they said it with a very sarcastic tone. Kick rocks, lady. Bottom line is that was a moving screen. It was not given to Iowa or anything like that. I disagree with that. If we disagree, we disagree, Kev. But I'm curious your thoughts. Just overall, great weekend of basketball. I think it's cool that we're bitching about officiating when it comes to the women's game, because you know why people care about officiating? Because you care so much about the game. You care so much about the result. You are emotionally invested into the product. So when the officials, who we don't give a whole lot of care in the world to, when they are the last thing you remember in the result of a game, that only happens when you give a damn. And people, for the first time in a long time, gave a damn about the women's game over the weekend, and I thought that was really cool.
It's a lot to unpack about that game. First thing I want to talk about or highlight in that game is that's how you guard Caitlin Clark. What UConn did, that is how you guard her. You blitz her off the high pick and roll. You make sure she gets the ball out of her hands. Mm-hmm. And to Caitlin Clark's credit, like people just think she's a shooter and a scorer. She's a great passer. And with them blitzing her off the high pick and roll, she was making the right decisions after she realized, like, wait a minute, I can't hit anything. So let me give up the ball. Let me do the smart basketball play. And Stuckey, 45 for Iowa, was the beneficiary of that. And credit to her, she had her best game of her career in the biggest moment against a powerhouse program like a UConn. She was finishing at the rim. She was hitting her mid-range shot. She was killing them on the boards. She had an outstanding game. Too bad for her, the NCAA decided to drug test her at 2:00 in the morning. That probably sucked for her, but kudos to her for having the game of her life. And she was the reason that Iowa won that basketball game because she was able to finish underneath the rim. Going on to the moving screen. Absolutely, it was a moving screen. She was moving. Wasn't a fan of the call because I wanted to see the ball go in the air. And let's be clear, I was rooting for Caitlin Clark and Iowa to win that game because I wanted to see the rematch between South Carolina and Iowa in the championship game. It was a moving screen. I think a lot of people look at sports and root for their interest in the game, and they really want, hey man, they want the cliche thing. I want the players to decide it on the court. What people are basically saying is, I want to see the ball in the air. I want to see the ball in the air with a chance to win or lose. Either way, I'm cool with it. Now, that being a sticky point, moving screen has been a thing in the women's college game since Brittany Griner. Brittany Griner in the championship season that they won when they went undefeated at Baylor, in that championship game in the first half, she was called for 2 moving screens. And I remember them talking about that game when it was happening all those years ago. And they said this, and they said that's 6-7 versus 5-7. And that's kind of the feeling that I got from that on Friday night. I was like, okay, the UConn woman set a pick on the Iowa woman who one is 6'5" and the other one is 5'5". Hey, guess what? That's what happens when somebody that much bigger than you is laying a screen. Yes, she was moving her feet, and by the letter of the law, that was a moving screen. But I still wanted to see the ball in the air, win or lose for UConn, and let the ball decide whatever happens. But ultimately, it was a moving screen, and then we went on to Sunday afternoon where we got an outstanding championship game.
Yeah, again, and on that too, but like this, when people say you don't make that call there and they say, well, it should come down to the players. Well, it did come down to the player. It came down to the player who made the movie screen. And I get people want it to come down to a shot and all this stuff, and ultimately did. Look, at first, I was one that said, oh, that's a bad call. Like, it was from one side. Like, I didn't see the back foot. And then there's the camera angle that's actually facing the front of the girl setting the pick. And it's like, oh, yeah, you could see there's even the lean and kind of pushed her off and all that stuff. I'm not a believer, and I'm very consistent with this. I was consistent with this with the Super Bowl with the Chiefs and the Eagles a couple of years ago when people were doing the whole imaginary, you don't call that there. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, if that's the case, then for the final 2 minutes of every big game, officials should just head to the locker room. No rules. It's for those who watch WrestleMania, bloodline rules. No, it doesn't matter. Got the Undertaker coming out, could pile drive the players. All right, rock bottom. All right, how about that? Maybe Stone Cold comes out, drops a couple stunners on some people. No rules. Okay, how about that? That's what we're going to roll with. No rules. So I get your point. You want to come down to the final shot, but when people say that, you can't have that without also acknowledging that. Well, then what do you do if there's a foul call? You just don't call it. I get it completely, but I said that about that Super Bowl a few years ago with the Chiefs and the Eagles. I'm like, you do make that call there because it's a penalty. He was holding on to it. He pulled it off. Bengals fans didn't like when I was like, Bengals fans, of course, they're going to say it was a bad call, but he was clear as day pulling on the damn jersey. He was clear as day holding on to him. You're taught not to do that. You did it anyways. You leave yourself vulnerable to it. Bottom line is, people say it didn't come down to the players. To me, it did. The player did not set a fundamental screen. It wasn't just on her, still on Paige as well, and all this. But again, people are they're as angry about it because they care. If no one gave a damn about that game, if only the 7 million people watched it, whatever, that watched the first game still on a bad number. 7 million people watched that. They're probably annoyed with it, but it doesn't just take over social media. I don't think I've had a day-long argument with people about a women's basketball game before until that one, nonetheless. And then that set up the championship game yesterday. Caitlin Clark in Iowa going up against South Carolina, 28-0, or we're not 28. What were they? They were 32-0.
30-something and
Yeah,
a lot of W's.
It was 31-0, I believe, and they finished 32-0 or something. Either way,
37-0.
37-0 because regular season's the 31 and 32, whatever. So, look, that was what you want out of a championship game as well, especially the pace early on. The pace early on. What ends up happening in that, I think that, when you're undefeated like that, you're South Carolina, you come out, you don't always come out that pedal to the metal a little bit. Iowa came out desperate. Iowa came out knowing that we have to play this pace. We have to play this way. We have to knock down these shots if we want a chance to win this game. And South Carolina came out a little flat. They were kind of slow. I know that everyone said, the officials calling fouls on the guards left and right, but they were not as aggressive on Caitlin Clark early in the game as what they were late. Also, Iowa had 0 bench points, 30 bench points for South Carolina. I mean, it was unbelievable. A lot of the reason that bench points are so one-sided too is because of foul trouble early. They had to go to the bench earlier. The bench played a lot of extended minutes. But overall, I haven't seen the number that came out for that one. Do you have that by any chance?
I do not. I haven't seen it yet.
I don't know if it beat the 14 mil, the most watched game ever on the ESPN network over the weekend. But again, had a lot of people talking about that yesterday. But Dawn Staley, South Carolina, another dynasty in the women's side. The more things change, the more they stay the same. We talk about parity in men and women's college basketball, but ultimately it's still the big dogs that are winning these things. South Carolina continues to roll, even having to wipe out their entire starting lineup from last year. You look at Purdue, you look at UConn on the men's side tonight. Another potential dynasty in the mix right now as we talk about the parity across college basketball on both sides. It's been a hell of a tournament for both men and women. We're going to talk about the men's game in a moment, but just your final closing thoughts on just the championship game between Iowa and South Carolina yesterday.
Before getting to the game, got to shout out Coach Dawn Staley. I made this post on social media at 1Kev Nash that the crazy thing about life in general is you never realize like how long you've been on this planet until you start thinking back to like, wait, I remember Dawn Staley playing at Virginia. Like, wait a minute. Like, I've watched her entire college career, watched her win gold medals in the Olympics, and now I'm watching her win her 3rd national championship as a coach. Man, I'm old. Like, that's what I felt last night. It's like, man, this is crazy. But to South Carolina's credit, and the thing that she preaches about her team is, hey, if you want to go ahead and lead the nation in scoring, you want to win these Player of the Year awards, this is not the program for you. The great thing about South Carolina is it's a team and they're deep. Like, they have over 8 players that average 15 minutes a game. 8 players that's getting 15 minutes a game. And that's not just like, oh, man, because they're blowing teams out. Yeah, they do that too. But like, it's equal opportunity scoring, it's equal opportunity rebound, it's equal opportunity defense. Like, they were just far too deep. And the crazy thing about it is the bench players are better than the starters. The bench players outside of Camila Cardoza are better than the starters. Like, so when South Carolina went to the bench, you saw a different type of basketball. When you saw Camila Cardoza in the game, is feed the paint. All the older upperclassmen, hey, we're more of a post-dominant playing team. But then when you get those young freshmen, it's push the pace, it's 3-point shooting, and that's what opened up the game for them. And then when they made the defensive switch to put Raven Johnson on Caitlin Clark, you got a faster player on her, a more athletic player on her. She got cookied at the end of the half. So you go back and you think like, oh my goodness, Caitlin Clark had 18 points in the first quarter. I was playing outstanding. They got the lead. But then you look at halftime, they're down 3. And that is the effect of a team, a deep team, not just like, oh man, they play 7 players. No. They play 8 players that all play well. We've seen a ton of basketball across our city, from the Flyers, from the Raiders, that like, yeah, they play 8 dudes, but they're really not getting much out of the, 6 and 8, it's really about the starters and maybe the 6th man. Not this team. This team gets scoring, rebounding, and defensive power from everybody out there on South Carolina's team. So it was just a team situation where they were able to win. And just speaking about Camila Cardoza, I mean this in the most flattering way. And I would say the same thing about a guy. She's a horse down there, dude. She's a horse. Like, it's simple physics, man. 6'7" versus 6'2". What you think's gonna happen? It's gonna be a bucket. It's gonna be a bucket. And when they were able to get it to her in her spot, it's a bucket.
And offensive rebounds too.
And killing them on the boards. Killing on the
I've
boards.
Been there.
And I mean, it is not just Camila Cardoza. It was what's her name? The freshman, Teresa Johnson. Like, she looked like she's the best player out there, and she's a freshman. So like, that's how far the women's game has come. They're like, hey man, we all seen the players come in and out of UConn. They would have the shining light, like a Maya Moore, and then they have a lot of other good players. But this team, man, they are scary hours, man. And guess what? A lot of those players are coming back, except for Camila Cardoza. Like, everybody else is coming back to school next year. So this run that they're on, because think about it, last year they were undefeated going into the Final Four when they lost to Iowa. This year they were able to capitalize and finish the season off as an undefeated team. Next year they're going to be right back at it.
Yeah, and obviously, so that caps off that season. No kidding too. So what? Get to the championship game or get knocked out in the Final Four last year, win the championship this year. Bree Hall going to be back along with that, great returning class. They're going to lose some stars to the WNBA, all that fun stuff. But the other thing that ticked me off over the weekend, Cap, at first I thought, I was like, okay, I'm letting social media win and take me down a path. I turned social media off. I just watched the game.
Turned social media off? Wow.
I put my phone down. Phone was dead, but it's not the point. But like, this hate for Caitlin Clark is weird. It is like a weird jealousy thing, and I have no clue. And it exists in the men's game as well. The thing that like irritates me, and I'm going to do it too. There's a little gap in our age, and obviously you do it with your teams, and I'm going to do it with mine, right? Like, I'm a big LeBron guy, so the next best player ever that's going to come up through the ranks, nothing that player does, I'm going to allow to go over LeBron, right? Just like you won't allow LeBron to go over MJ, and we've been down that path before. So that, and I'll call it toxicity because everyone's a part of it, where we will not budge on our takes on anything, right? Like, at all. But when the athletes do it, that is bad for the sport. And Breanna Stewart made me nauseous over the weekend. And Diana Taurasi and Rapinoe's wife, whatever her name, what is her name? Sue Bird.
Sue Bird. The great Sue Bird.
The Manning cast is cool because those dudes just sit back and like they dissect the game or whatever, but like there's no or he might kind of allude to his allegiance to the Colts or the Broncos or whatever, but like those three damn women just sat there and just took weird jabs at her the entire time. That is not a good look for the product. First of all, like, I feel like the jealousy, what it's coming from is I've never once said that the WNBA has never had good players. There's always been good players in college basketball and WNBA and women's basketball. But there's never been a player like Caitlin Clark as far as making people stop what they're doing to make basketball appointment watching. But what this has turned into is almost like a jealousy thing where they've taken offense to the fact that, oh, Caitlin Clark's why people care about women's basketball. Whether you like it or not, that's kind of the case. Because I feel like what they feel like is, well, we've always been this good. We've always had star players and all this stuff. And we feel like we've contributed to why people are tuning in now. Be that as it may. Bull riding, professional bull riding. There's a lot of really good professional bull riders, but there's just not that one guy or gal that makes people stop to give a damn about professional bull riding to make sure that they're there to watch it. Professional bowling, a lot of really good bowl. In fact, every bowler that's a pro bowler, they're a really good bowler. But no one cares enough to tune in to watch professional bowling. I've said this before about the G League. When WNBA players say, well, we work really hard. We work just as hard as the men. Yes, you do. No, I'm not doubting that. I'm not doubting that you're super talented. But the G League players work just as hard as the NBA guys, but no one's tuning into the G League games. Like, you have to have a reason to tune in. And believe it or not, Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, they're the whole reasons that people have just absolutely fallen in love with college basketball on the women's side this year. We're going to talk about the player on USC. We're going to talk about all these other great players. I grew up, I watched Cheryl Swoops. I watched Tina Thompson. I watched Cynthia Cooper. I watched Cheryl Miller. Teresa Weatherspoon. I can go down to Katie Smith. I watched all of them. All right. But I can't. Tamika Catchings, who played with the Fever, that's where Caitlin Clark's going. So I'm not poo-pooing on women's sports. So don't tune in and say, oh, here's another guy who's just crapping on women's sports. What I have a problem with is she is the ticket to taking that game to the next level. And now you have people who have not watched women's basketball in the past tuning in, and you're watching women just tear down that woman. Now, they're not directly doing it, but the whole weird, like, oh, who would you take first? Oh, Paige. And she takes the drink and next question. Like, it's just real petty stuff. I can't stand any of them. I hope they all fail the rest of their careers. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, go in there and make people actually give a damn because, yes, they're super talented, yes, but when you're going to disrespect the upcoming wave of players because you're jealous because you couldn't get people to care this way, that's a you problem. Don't project that onto everyone else. Oh, I was furious. Then
I think you still are furious.
Oh, yeah. And then Lynette Woodard, who they did everything to give her credit for what she accomplished. Then did some weird speech yesterday where basically just took it all back, and she is the leading scorer now. She broke the college and yours leading scorer. I don't hear about there's no 3-point line back in the day. If anything, the 3-point shot, although you get an extra additional point for it, that's still a tougher shot than a damn layup. What are we doing? Why do we do that when we do a Pistol Pete and everyone? Oh, that was back before they had a 3-point line. Yes, so that means you're scoring layups. Now you have to actually sit farther back from the bucket and knock down shots further away. It's tougher. That's why they give you the whole extra point because it's a much significantly more difficult shot than a layup. So continue. Take it from here. But yes, I was furious over the weekend. I was like, why is there so many and then Breanna Stewart? Well, she's not an all-time great unless she wins a national championship. What the hell are you talking about? Maybe if she went to a WNBA factory like UConn and played, like she played at Iowa, 0 points off the bench, 0 All-Americans around her. She was the only, that's disrespectful to the rest of it. She was the only good one. Iowa did a good job developing those others, but they had to come in and develop into good players. They weren't coming in 4 and 5 stars and McDonald's All-Americans like South Carolina. I love Don Staley. I'm not anti-Don Staley or South Carolina. I actually hate UConn now. I hate the UConn. I like Gino, but I absolutely hate the former women that play there. I can't stand them. I hope they all fail, and I hope Angel Reese and I hope Caitlin Clark and the new wave of players come in and actually make people care about it, and I think they have. We saw big growth over the weekend. Why are these women trying to tear these women down? It makes absolutely no sense to me. That's why they're going to continue enjoying flying Allegiant everywhere, and then when they're actually getting private jets, then they could thank Caitlin Clark, and they'll remember all these weird things they've been saying about it. So that's my girl, Caitlin Clark. I'm getting a Caitlin Clark jersey, dude.
So what's your question? Or you didn't have a question. You're just making a statement.
I'm making a long run-on sentence.
So, one, I think that it's not just Caitlin Clark that got, shots thrown at her. I think it's the whole incoming class. I think, if I'm not mistaken, she said that they got a rude awakening coming. And I think we would be fools to think that they don't. I mean, I remember when Sabrina Ionescu came into the league, like she was supposed to be the next hot thing. She didn't play very well her first 2 seasons. She started playing well when, they got Breanna Stewart on the New York Liberty and they got spacing on the court. And now she can do what she was brought there to do, is knock down shots and create off the dribble. Yeah. Before that, she was not doing that. So for us to actually think that these very competitive people aren't licking their chops to get at them, to show them. I mean, we saw this when Linsanity was going on. What happened when Linsanity was going on? World was going crazy. Oh, man, that game in Madison Square Garden versus the Lakers.
Yep.
And then they went down to Miami. And Norris Cole, LeBron, and D-Wade took them cookies, and Linsanity was over. These are competitive athletes as well. So you think the WNBA is not licking their chops, getting ready for the Caitlin Clark experience, getting ready for Camila Cardoza, getting ready for Angel Reese? They're absolutely 100% are getting ready for them and going to show them that this is a different level of basketball than college basketball. And I think that they will struggle early. And then eventually, a year or 2 into the league, they will settle in and become great basketball players. As far as the UConn, Sue Bird and Diana Taurasi. Look, Diana Taurasi is one of my favorite basketball players of all time, period. Like, look, this was in an era where I used to, respect the great Kobe Bryant, but hate him at the same time.
Yep.
Like
Tim Duncan, I was the same way.
Hey, Kobe, you great. I can't deny that you're great, but I hate you. You're a killer. Your Mamba mentality is just killing me. But I love Diana Taurasi. Diana Taurasi is a Kobe clone. Like, that's her game. Like, she tries and plays like Kobe Bryant. I respect her. I think a lot of her stuff was coming from, hey, man, she's rooting for her alma mater. She's rooting for UConn. It's the Sue Bird and Diana Taurasi show, a.k.a. the UConn Husky show. Like, they're not going to go on there and just be like, oh, man, equal everybody. It's all good. Like, if we were to do a watch party with Wright State playing UD, what do you think our commentary would be like? We wouldn't be like, oh, man, Deron Holmes is awesome, man. He's killing Wright State.
Keep in mind, UD's a bunch of cowards and will not play Wright State, so it would never happen. But, yes, I see your point.
But that's what would happen. We would be homers for our alma mater, and I think they were being homers for their alma mater. As far as the Caitlin Clark backlash, I mean, come on, man, you knew this was going to happen. We all knew that at some point they love you, and then turns on a dime. People start hating you for whatever you do. She's a great basketball player. There's no doubt about it. Everybody sees that with their own eyes. There's no question that she's a great basketball player. And I think that she's going to be great in the WNBA as well.
Oh, no, look, but that's usually the fandom. But also the WNBA players, it's not the same as the men's players, and not because it's a male-female thing. It's the NBA is a healthy league. The WNBA is on – it's not a healthy league. They operate at a loss every year, and that's not a hot take. It's the truth. They're looking for someone like the way the NBA was on life support. They needed Bird and Magic to come in and totally revitalize what the NBA was. That's what the WNBA, that's the point that they're at. It's not a coincidence that the Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark comparison of that, that insurgence of them into the WNBA could be the same impact of what you saw back in the day with Bird and Magic. That's kind of the expected impact here. And let's keep in mind, when Bird and Magic came into the NBA early as rookies in their career, it's not like there was bums in the NBA. There was really good players in the NBA, but there were just not players that people gave a damn enough about to make that sport healthy. That's the WNBA. I agree with you about Diana Taurasi, by the way. I mean, Diana's been around for a while. I mean, I'm watching her with Phoenix. I mean, I've watched her. I mean, I remember her in college. Completely agree about all of that. But it's when we say it's like the NBA, where the NBA they get their real defensive too and all this stuff and competitive. But the thing is, the WNBA, it's not the same thing. Like, you need to embrace her and bring her in. You trying to bring her down is not helping your sport as a whole, as they continue to complain about not, getting the fair treatment and equal treatment as the men's game and all of this. Well, the easiest and fastest way to get that is to be a viable revenue generating league. They are not. She's their ticket to do that. Hell, Angel Reese is number 2 most important player to the league, and she's not even projected to be a top 5 draft pick. That just shows you the power of the personalities on top of it. So anyways, I'm done complaining about it, but it was just like, come on, what are we doing? And the backlash you're talking about is usually fan backlash. It's usually not player backlash. And it was just like every player was to say she's not an all-time great because she didn't win a national championship. Well, then that's why it was weird seeing Iowa there, because you talk about South Carolina and all the players. This is not a dig at them, but it's 4-star, 5-star, 4-star, 5-star. That's not Iowa, and there was no players coming off the bench. They had 2 starters who were out and injured for the rest of the season. Those aren't excuses, but they weren't starting a race from the same block, I guess is my point as far as that's concerned. But yeah, and then you have Iowa's coach after saying, we're just happy to be here. Big difference in teams. Like, you'll never hear Don Staley just say, well, we're just happy to be here. No, Bluter was after the game. She was smiling. It was like, you could tell that's a program that does not have championship expectations, because they were just happy to be here. South Carolina with Don Staley, Gino Airman, UConn, all that. No, they weren't just happy to be there. Their goal is to win championships, nonetheless, which is why the officials should have let it come down to the final shot.
But last thing on this, definitely want to point out the fact that you talk about how Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, and all of them, we're talking about, the hate they have for Caitlin Clark, and I use the term hate very loosely. Somebody that didn't have hate for Caitlin Clark was the great Dawn Staley.
Yeah.
She's just a class act, one of the best coaches in college basketball, bar none. All the great things that she said, not only about Caitlin Clark, but the rest of the program at Iowa after, capturing the championship. She obviously thanked them and said that Caitlin Clark is helping taking women's basketball to another level. You rewind that a couple of weeks ago when South Carolina and LSU got into that little scuffle at the SEC tournament game. She was the first person speaking about, like, that's not how we want to handle scuffles on the court. We teach our kids to stay on the bench, and we will be talking to them about that. Coach Staley does, quote unquote, everything right. And I just want to make sure that, like, if we're going to be highlighting the fact that the negativity that came out of the weekend, I want to highlight the positive, the part that came out, especially from Coach Staley.
Yeah. And again, and another thing too, to media out there, when it's press conferences for a Final Four and for these big games, stop trying to ask political questions that are going to get answers that are going to overshadow what is the most important. Like, we're not getting into that, but she was asked her thoughts on transgenders in sports. Okay. And we're not getting into that. I'm not even going to read comments that come in about it. A lot of people piling on Don Staley about that as well. Like, Caitlin Clark, talk about Iowa, or about South Carolina being undefeated, talk about this national championship game, 2 best teams going head to head. That usually doesn't happen in these types of tournaments. It's nice and refreshing to see that. And then this reporter out of nowhere asked that stupid question. Like, why do we do this? Why do we like? It's like those guys want to hijack everything that is good about a sport and try to find a storyline to put it in there. I wish Don Staley would have just said no comment. We're talking about we were talking earlier. I know that if you go to any game, every team has an SID.
Yeah.
And SIDs usually kind of oversee these types of press conferences because if they need to step in, if something kind of weird or shady is asked, like whatever, I just wish there'd be a zero tolerance for that. Like those types of, hey, you want to run a feature piece on an opinionated piece on that? There's a time and place to ask that. And if we don't give you that time to ask that, oh, well, I can't stand that. I just wish that, you talk about the women's game needing to protect itself. I would have had a moderator in there saying, we're not answering those types of questions here. This is about the Final Four. You got a question about the Final Four. You got a question about Caitlin Clark. You got a question about any of the great players on the South Carolina roster. Got a question about Gino. Got a question about any of the, whatever, the officiating call from the previous game. You got a question about that. We're all ears, but we're not here to have a political discussion. Take that garbage elsewhere. That reporter pissed me off when he asked that because the whole thing went sideways from that. Luckily, it didn't totally take away from that because Don Staley is my favorite coach in basketball right now, male or female. But, man, it almost got hijacked. Like, she thought about the answer, too. She was very quiet. She took a sip of water, and then she went into the deep end. I'm like, no, just say no answer, no comment for right now. But nonetheless. So
Coach Staley ain't running.
Aye. All right, Kenner and Kev Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. A lot of people talk about the eclipse. I still got my eclipse glasses right here, ready to go. What do we do with these? We save them for the next one? We won't be here for the next
Souvenir.
I said I'll be fired by the next one. I don't think I'll be here at 98 years old.
Let's hope not.
Thanks. All right, Kenner and Kev, 1410 ESPN Radio. We'll have an update on what happened to Jonathan India coming up around the corner. Calipari to Arkansas. What happened in Kentucky? Also, Calipari, he wanted to be a Buckeye, apparently. We'll talk about that when we come back.
throughout the day. For former college and
And we are back. It's the Kinner and Kev Show. Kinner and Kev Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM, live on the Chatterbox Sports Network. Again, we started that to last Thursday. Moving forward, 3 to 5 on Chatterbox, 3 to 6 on 1410 Wing AM. Of course, off the bench with Trace Fowler and the guys, of course, that's weekdays from 1 to 3 right here on 1410 Wing AM. They're on from 10 to noon in the morning as well. Look, it's a lot of cross collaboration here. It's a lot of partnerships. I appreciate them. We're off and rolling here this week. So kind of wild, interesting news. It was Charlie Goldsmith of the Cincinnati Enquirer, covers the Cincinnati Reds, of course. Had a tweet a litlittle bit ago that said Jonathan India left pregame warmups with the team trainer. He was in some pain. Apparently, he caught a foul ball. I don't know. Just contact was made on him by a foul ball or something along those lines. Again, with us being live on the air, it's hard to go and get everything all at once. But not good for a team that's pretty banged up as it is, and they're trying to remain as healthful, trying to just buy time to get some of these guys back, nonetheless. But Jonathan India walked back onto the field. India has his bat and presumably went into the cage, according to Charlie Goldsmith, as this timeline continues.
Tough guy.
He also says Nick Lodolo will now make his return on Saturday, David Bell said. No update yet on India, but again, that was a tweet before the update technically. I was just reading him out of order. So that's the thing. They're starting to get a little help. Nick Lodolo coming back. Obviously the McLean thing was brutal to start, as well as Friedel. And it's going to be interesting to see. Look, I don't like how they looked over the weekend. I don't really like that series at all against the Mets. Look, they're what, 5-4 now. As we sit here, I just think that this is who this team is. This team has a lot of second-year players. Christian Encarnacion Strand, a lot of people are panicking when it comes to him. He didn't even play an entire season with the Reds last year. He's still like this idea that he's not a rookie this year. Like, they have yet to play an entire season with the organization. These guys are still technically rookies, right? My only complaint about any of these players was Elly De La Cruz last week with the errors he was making in the infield. Because as I said, you want to step in the box and adjust to major league pitching, that's going to take time. The strikeout numbers are higher than I would like them to be, but I'm not going to freak out on a guy that hasn't even played an entire regular season's worth of games. I'm not panicking about that yet. The hitting will come. These guys are adjusting to that. The stuff I don't like is the errors made. You know, when you're making as much money as these guys are, when you're a professional baseball player, I don't think it is that crazy for me to expect you to field a ground ball. I guarantee you, on my way home, I always see the little league kids practicing at the field, you know, down the road here. Guarantee you, if those kids let a ball go through their legs, there's going to be a coach saying, "Listen here, you little." No, I'm just joking.
Whoa.
You know, I'm saying, but no, they're gonna get on him. They're gonna, you know, it's taught to you from a little kid how to field a ball. I don't think it's that crazy to expect Elly De La Cruz to be able to field a ball. Last thing on this, one thing I want to touch on too, and I was asked about this on Adam's show yesterday, about what do I think the problem is with the defense. And look, they got guys playing out of position and all this, but the thing is, like, do the Reds have a player that is dominant at any particular position on that field? What the Reds brag about, and I'm not saying I'm down on it, but the Reds have a lot of guys, Kev, that are versatile, that they could play third, they could play short, they could play second, they could play a little outfield, but they don't have anyone that's dominant at third, dominant at short, dominant at second, dominant in the outfield. And I think that hurts. Like, although that's the strength, that's what the guys at Nick Krall. And look, by the way, when you have teams who operate the way the Reds do, where they're not going to go spend a ton of money, they are looking for guys that they could stretch, like that they could stretch out that dollar. So if I can get a guy that could play third, short, second, and outfield, I'm going to get that guy over the best second baseman in baseball. I'm not saying that's the wrong approach. I kind of like it. It's kind of helping the Reds right now, who are banged up a little bit. They're a little versatile. They can move guys around. The DH allows them to be more versatile. So I'm not saying I dislike it, but is it fair of me to say, and again, for those in the chat, I'm curious your guys' thoughts. Is it fair of me to say that the Reds are never going to be an elite defensive team as long as they have that approach where they don't have a true any position? They don't have a true first baseman, a true third baseman, a true second baseman, a true short. They don't have a true outfield. They don't have a true anything. Hell, half the time, they don't even know who their starters are, because I don't think the Reds have decided who's going to be a long-term starter and who's going to be coming out of the bullpen. And again, it sounds like I'm complaining. I'm not. However, I just don't think it is possible for this team to ever be very, very good defensively when you are constantly moving them around. Now, you're going to say, well, Kenner, that's all of baseball right now. And you're right. And I don't have a rebuttal to that, but it doesn't mean that just because everyone else does it, that means the Reds can do it and get away with it. All I'm saying is some of the other teams that do that, they might have one or two legit position players that's their true position. Joey Votto was a first baseman. That was it. Joey Votto had to focus on being a first baseman and a first baseman only. That was it. So that's my concern about the Reds. When they make as many errors as they do defensively, it's because they have guys, their strength is how versatile they are. Their strength is their weakness. Their strength is how versatile these players are, but their weakness is they don't have an elite third, short, second, outfielder. They don't have anyone that has honed their craft, if you will. And I think that could be a problem. It's kind of like in our line of work, when they ask you to be the program director and they ask you to do sales and they give you a budget, even though you say you're just helping them, but they want you to have a budget. They give you all these things to take away from your responsibility of being a show host in the afternoon, and then wonder why, well, how come you didn't do this? Well, maybe I just didn't have time. Maybe I'd be a better show host if I was a show host only. Maybe I'd be a better program director if I was just a program director only, right? Like, that's the thing. When you stretch people thin and they have to work on, well, I need to make sure I'm getting better at third base, but man, if they need me at second, I might need to get a little better at this, and I might need to, better need to go work on the outfield. That's all my point is their strength is it's how versatile they are, but I also think that's their weakness.
Well, at least you're getting paid for doing 4 jobs.
Yeah. Oh, God, no.
No, in all seriousness. Yeah, you're right. I mean, you can have versatile players, and versatile players are definitely needed in the game of baseball. It's all sports right about now. Like, I mean, you know, you can take it to the sports that I follow the closest, the NBA. I mean, you know, there is basically positionless basketball. I mean, there's only a couple quote unquote true point guards. There's only a true centers out there, only a handful. So in the world of baseball, like when I fell in love with baseball, I started watching baseball a lot. Like those guys that could do a whole bunch. They weren't starters. Like they were spot players. Like, hey man, we need you in a pinch. You need to go to second. Hey, we need you in pinch. You need you to go to the outfield. Now these type of guys are starters all across the league. But in my book, the position you have to have, the two you have to have, that is what they do, is shortstop and second base. I think those are the two most important parts outside of the pitcher and catcher on defense. Like you got to have a guy that is strictly there to play shortstop. I mean, shoot, you could take it all the way back to like Ozzie Davis. Like, you know, he wasn't a stick. He didn't have a bat. His game was the glove. That's what he was there for. He was there to make web jams. He was there to get outs. He was there to make acrobat catches and to pick guys off. That was his job. Like now it's like, hey man, we just need you to do a little bit of everything and do a little bit of everything solidly instead of honing your craft. Like, I mean, you know, people rag on Derek Jeter and say like, well, if you look at Derek Jeter's stats, he really wasn't that good, but he came up clutch, and that's why he was a great player. But he was damn good at shortstop. He was damn good, and that's what his craft was. So I think that's kind of like the problem with a lot of teams in baseball. Like, there's a lot of guys that could do some things very well, but you got to be able to play short and second base. Like those are vital, because like that's where the action is.
Yep, especially I mean right up the middle.
Yeah,
it's very, very key. As far as that's concerned. And look, the thing is, and I got caught up in the transition of baseball at the time I was younger, having very old school views of baseball. That's why I shout out to my guy, Nick Kirby. You know, Nick Kirby and I before, you know, we're friends now, but at the beginning, I don't think he liked me very much because I was calling him out left and right. I was so sick of hearing about launch angle. I was so sick of hearing about all these analytics. I said, Nick, I love you, but my God, I was like, I don't care about any of that. Just knock the ball to the ballpark. That's all I care. These are the only thing in baseball I care about. Did you get a hit? And did that hit produce a run? That's all I care about. I don't care about anything else. And a pitcher, I don't care about, I don't care about how many times the ball turns out of your hand. I don't even know what the proper terms is. I'm not going to take the
spin
time.
rate.
Now, I've had this said. Nick brought up a good point back in the day when he took a shot at me when he said, well, just because you're not smart enough to understand it doesn't mean that it's not good. I said, that's probably a good point. That's probably a fair, valid point. I don't understand all this stuff. But baseball was at its best when it was dumbed down for guys like me. If I don't know much about baseball and I am just smart enough to comprehend that ball that left the ballpark brought a run in, I don't need to know anything else. I don't need to know the launch angle. I don't need to know I don't need to know how hard it came off the GD bat. I don't need to know any of that. The other one was the bad luck. I was like, how in a sport where people are absolutely drooling over stats can all of a sudden luck be chalked up to, well, they haven't had a hit in 5 games, but man, they're hitting the ball hard. Well, what? That just means they're hitting some hard outs. I don't care about hard outs. But all of that being said, I love the Reds. They're continuing to fight. They're going to be a fun team. I just think that for right now, you have a lot of second-year players, and that sounds better than saying, well, we have a lot of players that still haven't even played a full regular season's worth of games. And that's the reality of it. Ellie has yet to play a full regular season's worth of games. Same thing with Spencer Steer, who's been fantastic. Will Benson is my favorite Red right now, and I'm not mad at any Red right now in particular. I'm not even really complaining. It's just been that series against the Mets was kind of a kick in the man parts a little bit because, they didn't look great in that loss against the Nationals, but they took 2 of 3. They looked really, really poor in one of those losses against the Phillies, but they took 2 of 3. Losing to the Mets like that was kind of painful. But the Reds are back in action tonight. We'll have all of it right here. They got the Brewers coming up later on tonight, 1410 ESPN Radio, 640 the first pitch. And of course, 610 pregame coverage begins right here on 1410 Wing AM. I know that right now with everything going on with Jonathan India, I have not been told or updated regarding his spot in the lineup. The lineup was put out earlier today. He's supposed to bat leadoff. India, Steer, and Strand, 1, 2, and 3. Candelario, Fairchild, and Cruz, 4, 5, and 6. And Stevenson, Benson, and Espinal are your 7, 8, and 9 hitters with Graham Ashcraft on.
Wait. Where's the music, man? You can't do the lineup without the music.
I'll give it the full lineup treatment coming up here in a bit.
Okay. I know people probably listening, didn't get their cue for the lineup without the music, man.
So, nonetheless,
Act like you've done this before.
Ricky on YouTube says, I'm very uneducated on analytics. I'm trying to see this thing will get out of my way. My bad. The ball field, hit the ball, field the ball. Yes, I'm with you, Ricky. Hit the ball, field the ball. Like, honestly, like, this is why when basketball is starting to get too much in analytics, it drives me nuts. Like, I don't need to know how many times the ball spins off the fingertips of Steph Curry. If I watch Steph Curry shoot and it goes in the net, 3 points.
The revolution.
If he shoots and it doesn't go in, no points. Wow. We're all smart. We're all on the same playing field. But now, oh man, we're going to watch a guy that leads the NBA in revolutions tonight. Huh? The hell does that mean? I know what it means, but it's like, and by the way, that's why I don't like advanced analytics in baseball. If you're trying to attract new fans to your sport, you shouldn't have to go to college to get a degree to watch a sport. I shouldn't have to take an entire semester's course on all of these formulas to watch baseball. I should just be as dumb as Kenner, sit down. Hey, when that ball leaves the ballpark in between those two lines on the first and third base line, that's called a home run. And if people are on base and that happens, all those guys on base, that's counted as an individual run each. No one on base. It's just one run. That's simple. Very, very simple stuff. I'm a very simple person, Kev. It's that simple. Me.
Simpleton.
All right. We'll be right back because I've been a horrible show host today. First of all, I went off on women's sports. That's a no-no. We'll see if it's the Kev Nash show tomorrow. I don't know what's cancelable or not.
I doubt it.
That's going to say if I haven't got let go from this job.
Yeah, you're good. Don't worry about it.
Tomorrow's Tuesday, though. Remember what I told you?
You getting taxes done?
No, that's Friday.
Oh, down to the wire again.
So I might as well it's payday on Friday. Maybe. You know how big payday is here. So when they tell me how much I owe, and this is, you want to know what my favorite game is? My favorite game is the game where I pay Kettering my taxes, and then they send these stupid little notes saying, hey, you're going to be in big trouble with the IRS if you don't pay this. I'm like, I have the folder right here, you jerks. I paid it. I have the receipt. I love receipts, Kev. Receipts saved me last week, too.
Indeed.
Kind of. They ignored the receipts. But seriously, Kettering, get your stuff together. Why do you keep sending threatening men? One of my good friends, too, they said, they haven't filed taxes in 10 years. That's bogus. This girl's one of the most responsible people I know. There's no way in hell this woman went without 10 years without filing taxes in the city of Kettering. Then you get down there. Oh, I'm so sorry, ma'am. You did file them. Uh-huh. That's why they gave me this pretty little folder here. That's why I have this receipt here. So I can't wait to see when I get it. Like, we're going to do some over-unders. Am I going to get that notification in June or July? But on Friday, I'm going to go file my taxes. I'm going to go right to the Kettering office and make sure I pay. And then we're going to sit back and wait for everyone's favorite game. When are they going to say that you didn't pay what you just paid them?
Where are you getting taxes done?
Arrowhead Tax Service, Michael Maxwell over in New Carlisle.
Good guys.
He is. You want to know why he's a good guy? Because he called me to say, hey, the 15th is coming up. And because the last 2 years I've waited to the very last second to get my taxes done. And by the very last second means he had to squeeze me in to a spot that doesn't exist because he said, hey, I'm booked up.
Oh, good.
Because everyone goes to Michael Maxwell with Arrowhead Tax Service.
Right? Absolutely. Because right now you can get that free estimate. All you got to do is call Michael at 937-543-5770 for the free estimate. Plus, if you're military, a veteran, or a first responder, you get 25% off.
And what's also cool is all portions of the return, or of his portion of your payment for that, a portion of that does go to like a local nonprofit in the area. So at the bottom, when you go in, there'll be 3 options at the bottom, and he'll say, hey, like one's like a little league team in the area, a portion of what you pay him will go towards something in town. So I think that's pretty cool.
Man of the community.
Yep. And the Taxes to Go app, very convenient. All you got to do, you load everything on the app. You don't have to actually go in. He takes care of it all for you. And bada bing, bada boom, he'll tell you how much you owe, or he'll tell how much you're going to get paid. It's that simple. It's like analytics in baseball. That's simple.
Cash me out.
Exactly. We'll be right back. Calipari wanted to be a Buckeye. Let's see if I'm a good host and can stick to that when we come back. And we are back. It's the Kinner and Kev show here on 1410 ESPN Radio. Coming up later on tonight, we have Reds baseball. 6:10 pregame coverage begins. And 6:40 will be the first pitch. Graham Ashcraft on the mound, as we talked about. Reds dropping that series against the Mets over the weekend, looking to turn things around with Ashcraft on the mound tonight. A couple updates regarding the Cincinnati Reds. It looks like everyone can exhale a little bit when it comes to Jonathan India. He was back out on the field taking batting practice. He has not been scratched from the starting lineup, from my understanding. So that's a good thing as far as that's concerned. A lot of chatter about the Reds potentially going to a six-man rotation as they implement Nick Lodolo back. I don't mind that right now, mainly because just because Nick Lodolo is coming back, it doesn't mean that he's coming back to stay. I mean, look, we've seen how finicky these pitchers could be right now. A lot of injuries across the board, whether it is so while a lot of people are blaming the pitch clock, I think it was Glass now. I forgot. I watched a video a little bit ago of a pitcher, and I can't remember who it was, that they're saying it's not the pitch clock that's leading to these injuries. It's actually the overcompensation for not being able to use any kind of substance to help grip the ball.
Makes sense.
Some of these pitchers are saying it's not the pitch clock. Some are. But you have some organizations that are saying the pitch clock, that is probably the organizations that didn't vote for it, obviously, saying that that's leading to an uptick in injury. It could be a combination of both.
Yeah, it's always a combination of both.
The problem is there's no scientific way to prove it. But again, who am I, fat 5'5" Kinner, sitting here in the studio saying, "Oh no, you don't need gription on the ball. Just go throw it. You wuss, you millionaire pitcher, always complaining." But if they got used to having to grip a ball a certain way, I think it was Glass. Either way, it doesn't matter. Whoever the pitcher was in the video is great radio. I don't remember who it was I watched, but said he's had to change how he holds his two-seam fastball. He's had to change how he holds a lot of different pitches just because he has to hold it tighter to the seam to help get a tighter grip of the ball because he doesn't have access to that. He said he would use sunscreen and rosin a lot of times. You can't use that at all anymore. But that's what he's saying, that after he pitches now, without being able to use any of that substance, that he is a lot tighter the next day. He is sore in spots he's never been tightened before his entire baseball career.
I wonder if there's a study or something out there that can track how many guys are their blisters on their hands and things of that nature. You would imagine if they're not having a substance to, calm down on the friction when the ball is leaving their hands, you would imagine they're getting more blisters and stuff like that. So, I mean, could that be a part of the issue? Talking about the substances, I mean, you compound that with the pitch clock, the speed of the game now. I mean, it's probably a combination of all those things causing these injuries. But, at some point, adjustments are going to be made. You think back all the way back in the day, back when Satchel Paige was pitching, they weren't out there with rosin and, sunscreen and everything like that. They were just picking up a dry baseball and hurling that bad boy.
Let's switch over to college basketball real quick. We only have a little bit remaining here. We got Keith Byers going to hang out with us
KB
here in studio here in just a little bit. But we're going to talk with him. Dallin Hayden entered the transfer portal, by the way. I'm not really surprised by that. And in typical social media fashion, everyone's ripping Ohio State and Ryan Day for this. This is a good thing. Joe Burrow left the Ohio State Buckeyes because there was too much talent in the quarterback room. Joe Burrow didn't leave Ohio State because he wasn't a good quarterback. Joe Burrow left Ohio State because there just wasn't enough. Only one football.
Right.
It is what it is. When you are Ohio State, you would like to think that you have depth at multiple position groups, that when players that you're going to let potential starters go. Dallin Hayden's a good enough running back to start for pretty much, I'd say, any high major program out there, right?
Yeah.
And I always want to say high major for football, but Power 5 program, if you will. Dallin Hayden's a legit back, but I'm not taking him over Judkins, and I'm not taking him over, who they have right now in that room. So it's just I'm bummed about it, but I'm not bummed about it. It just, that's the price of being a Buckeye fan when there's so much. That sounds really conceited. I get that, but that's a good thing. Ohio State's been a little bare at certain position groups over the years. They have depth at running back. We knew good running backs were possibly going to leave. Good receivers are going to end up leaving at a certain point. There's only so many snaps to go around for these guys, and I don't think he saw an opportunity or window. He's going to be a third-year player. He needs to get heavy snaps if he wants the chance to show that he could be an NFL running back someday.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the part that upsets me about the whole Dallin Hayden situation does go to Coach Day, and I'm
really
the biggest Coach Day apologist out there.
I'm curious what you're going to say on that.
It's the fact that every time that he got on the field, he made plays. And why was he on the field more? Like, what are we saving him for? Like, he's a running back. Like, we could talk about the devalue of the running back position, yada, yada, yada. But there's no doubt that when he was on the field, he made plays. I mean, dating back to, when the whole running back room was depleted, I guess it was versus Purdue this past season, he balled out of control. And whenever he got on the field, he balled out. I mean, you look at, we were like, okay, he's going to get a lot of run in the semifinal versus Georgia. That didn't happen. Like, we have fullbacks in there once, all of our running backs got banged up. Like, why wasn't he playing? Like, I'm not sure why he wasn't on the field. That's a question only Coach Day and Tony Alford can figure out or answer. Guess we won't be asking Tony Alford that since he's not Ohio State coach anymore. But you're right. Like, Dallin Hayden has shown whenever he was on the football field to be a very good, capable back. He's going to end up at, I don't know, Memphis, and then put up like 1,500 yards and then get drafted. And everybody's going to be like, why didn't we get him? You're going to get drafted like the 3rd round, end up with the Dallas Cowboys, put up 1,500 yards for them. And we're just going to be like, wait, man, he should have been playing for us. No doo-doo. No doo-doo. Especially last year. Like last year, I was really perturbed about him not playing because he had that pop, especially when Travion Henderson was down with the injuries. Like, hey, I respect the heck out of Mayan Williams, but he didn't add that pop, that speed pop that we needed with a suspect offensive line. Dallin Hayden provided that. So if Dallin Hayden is transferring somewhere else to better his chances of making his dreams come true and making it to the NFL, I have absolutely no problem with that. I mean, it's a crowded room. Would you want him sitting on the bench for his entire career and getting that one shot, that 1 year to prove that he's an NFL back next year? Like, come on, man. He's trying to get on the field now. And to be honest, I'm more surprised that he didn't transfer the second Quishon Junkins transfer to Ohio State. Like, if I was in his corner, if I was a family friend or something like that, I'd be like, all right, man, it's time to make that move. Time to kick the can on down the road and see what's up with Tennessee or go back home to Memphis or something like that. Like, find somewhere. There's always a program in need of a good running back, and you are a good running back. So I would have left at the first time that Junkins showed up on Ohio State campus.
Tony Alford no longer the Buckeye running back coach, but he could continue to be Hayden's running back coach.
True.
I don't know the running back situation with that team up north right now. But
they got the kid.
They had the one running back coming back.
Yeah. They got Edwards. Yes. Edwards, he's coming back. They got the guy that won Ohio State, Mr. Football from Cincinnati. He's going to Michigan. So they got guys in the room. Not saying that he can't go up there and compete for playing time, but if I'm him, I'm trying to find, hey man, if it's a Marshall's always been good at running the football. Wherever I can get on
Wisconsin,
the field
with Fickle.
Yeah, I mean,
Cincinnati.
Braylon Allen's headed to the NFL. Whatever school that I can get on there and get me about 200 to 300 carries, that's where I'm going. Because at this point, in his situation, it's really not about winning championships. It's about putting that film out there for the NFL. Like, you sometimes you have to be selfish in that standpoint of like, hey man, it's really all about me and where can I set myself up best to put out the best film for the NFL.
It's a Kenner and Kev show here on 1410 ESPN Radio. Some news that shocked everyone last night on the college basketball side was John Calipari. After, a couple weeks ago, after Oakland upset them in the NCAA tournament, that was one of the bigger upsets of this year's NCAA tournament. Of course, there's a lot of talk about, whether Kentucky should move on from Calipari. Well, him and their athletic director, they met. It looked like they were going to go one more year and just see if, they can make some changes and adapt to certain things. Well, Kentucky may have been willing to give Calipari one more year, but Calipari has found a situation that he's no longer wanting to be with Kentucky. So he didn't get dumped. He's dumping them. And right now we're questioning it, but he might have found a younger, hotter team to work with. I don't really know. But Arkansas is where Calipari is where he's going to end up. But everyone's making a big deal about, I never thought I'd see a coach leave Kentucky for Arkansas. In today's day and age, there's a lot of players that leave certain programs that I never thought a player would leave that program to go play there. Those players that are leaving certain big programs to go to lesser than programs, if you will, it's all about the Benjamins. It's all about the Doulas. It's all about the doll hairs. And $5 million in NIL would be one of the highest NIL collectives to work with in all of college athletics from a basketball standpoint. On top of that, I think that's one reason. I read multiple articles today that said that, it wasn't easy getting NIL support, and it's Kentucky. How is Kentucky struggling with NIL support? Or there's NIL money there, but because Calipari has rubbed some people the wrong way over the years, that those relationships have kind of been a little thin. Look, KB's talked about this multiple times. We're going to talk with him in a moment. He says a lot of times coaches, look at Belichick leaving New England. Belichick's not a bad coach, but there's a certain point where you've overstayed. Your message is just stale at a certain point. It just needs to be reinvigorated a little bit. It needs new surroundings. It needs new people. It needs new management. It just needs a fresh coat of paint. I believe Calipari is one hell of a basketball coach. I know a lot of people are poo-pooing on him. Calipari is a very good basketball coach because of what his approach to being a college basketball coach is. He's not the college basketball coach that you guys want him to be, and I'm curious your take on this. My whole view on Calipari changed when I watched that documentary, and it was a while ago. I think it was a good 6-7 years ago, excuse me, when that came out. But Kentucky supported the push for Calipari, where my goal is to change the lives of these young men and put them in position to go gain generational, money and go to the league. And that he's accomplished. Everyone's making a big deal about, look at the list of players that he's coached and everything. And he only has one championship to show for it. I completely get it. But Kentucky can't pretend to be a national championship program that's what they're aspiring to be, because they've continued to support Calipari's approach of, my goal is to put guys in the league. And what ends up happening is everyone's going to talk about all the talent he brings in. He's bringing in talent. He's bringing in nothing but rosters of one and done players, two and done type of players when it's all said and done. He's not building a program. Calipari's he's never really truly built a program. He's never had guys come in and be 3-4 year guys, like not his main core guys. And some of his best teams have had those, but there's they've supported that approach. So you can't support that approach his entire 16-year run and then all of a sudden be like, well, what the hell? You did it. That's what I said about David Bell years ago. How do you get mad if David Bell's losing a bunch of games because the front office is forcing him to be nothing but, to dumb baseball down to almost, like a manual. Okay, when this happens, you do this. When this happens, you do that. We're going to take the gut feel out of it. If the front office is making you do something and you're executing that plan based on what you're having them do, how could they ever fire you? Well, that's kind of what I am with Calipari. Every year that athletic director signed off on his approach to putting guys in the league. And now you're mad because there's no championships to show for it. You can't have it both ways. That's why Duke had to find a way with Coach K to adapt. He didn't want one and dones. He adapted to, well, we could have a couple one and dones, but I still need my 3-4 year players to round out the roster. Calipari never did that. That's going to be something that he has to change at Arkansas, because I feel like it may continue at Arkansas. Arkansas is going to be the new NBA leader in guys, but will they have any championships or tournament games wins to show for it? I don't know. Something has to change, but Kentucky, they have to change too. They have to change their approach to who they go get to be the next head coach, to be the replacement for Calipari. I just think Kentucky fans, you wanted him gone. You're going to get what you ask for. And now it sounds like I'm saying that in a threatening way. You're going to get what you ask for. I just don't know what you asked for. You asked to move on from one of the best coaches in the history of college basketball. I just don't know how smart that was. I'm not saying it was the wrong decision. I just don't know if it was the right one. I guess it just matters who when it's all said and done.
Yeah, Coach Cal, I'm a little bit older than you, so I remember Coach Calipari way back when he was coaching at Memphis with guys like Marcus Camby. So he's never had a problem getting elite talent to come to wherever he is. Obviously, Memphis with Derrick Rose, and the countless amount of guys that he got to go to the powerhouse Kentucky. Devin Booker was coming off the bench for him at Kentucky. We could talk about the Anthony Davis's, Boogie Cousins, John Wall. Like, the list goes on and on and on about the talent. And that's great that you're getting the talent to come there. And it's great that he has this life mission to help young people achieve their goals and make generational wealth. The championships is one thing. The fact that you can't make it out of the first weekend is a totally different other thing. Like, I don't think that the folks at Kentucky will be that upset with Coach Cal and his recent lack there of success in the at the school if they weren't getting bounced so early. If these were
Oakland's, and was that St. Peter's or
was it St. Peter's? I can't remember.
I think that's either way, but yeah.
Like, if these are Elite 8 losses, these are Sweet 16 losses, these are Final Four losses, people would just be like, man, we're right there. We're right there. We just got to get over the hump. We just got to get this one thing fixed. Maybe we can get so-and-so to stay one more season instead of go to the NBA. Like, when you're out in the first weekend, year after year after year, this is 1, 2, 3, 4 years in a row. We're out in the first weekend. And I think that's where the disconnect comes. And I mean, when you have a boss and his athletic director and the boosters are his boss say, hey, man, we want to make some changes about how we do this, you have to be receptive to that. And, you know, with Calipari, he still wields a very strong popularity in college basketball. So if his agent is dialing up other schools across the nation saying, hey, Calipari would be interested if you gave him an offer, you think Arkansas isn't going to jump at that opportunity? Absolutely they are. That him going to Arkansas is like, I don't know, Ryan Day leaving to go to Purdue. That's what that is. That's the type of move that is. In his favor, all the guys that were committed to Kentucky are now in the transfer portal, and I wonder where they're going to end up. So all those young guys that were headed to Kentucky this year, they're coming with him to Arkansas. So he's like a Pied Piper. So he's going to get the talent. Can he coach that said talent up? Because a lot of the guys on his coaching staff, like a Raj Strickland, like a Rajon Rondo, who was like an assistant coach on their team this past season, like, well, maybe not a coach, but like a scout. He was around the program a ton. He was finishing up classes at Kentucky. Are they going to follow him to Arkansas, or are they going to be loyal to the Big Blue Nation? So it's really about the staff that he surrounds himself with down there in Arkansas if he's going to be successful.
Yeah, again, you look at the Kentucky, I mean, losing to 14 seed Oakland. All right, they lost to 3 seed Kansas, you know, in 23, but then they lost to St. Peter's, a 15 seed in 22. So when you look at 2 of his last 3 tournament losses have come in the first or second round against double-digit seeds. As far as that's concerned, here's the other thing. When we talk about parity in college basketball, we could sit here and say there's no way Oakland should be better than Kentucky. There's no way that St. Peter's should be better than Kentucky. Those teams are definitely not more talented than Kentucky, but those are better teams. Like, I know this sounds wild, and you got to understand where I'm coming from with this. I'm never saying that those programs are better or that those players are better, but when you want to talk about team basketball,
right?
Oakland is a better team. They played better team basketball because you have rosters of guys that have played together for years. I'm not saying that, you know, there's some newcomers in and out, but the core is all the same. Townsend's been there for years. Finally winning Horizon League Player of the Year. The core is there, right? Like St. Peter's, same thing. A lot of those guys, they've been there for quite a few years. Kentucky is a puzzle every year that they're just putting puzzle pieces together, and they make a full puzzle, but it's not as fluid as the others. So that's the problem. That's the problem with that approach in today's game. That's why you see that national championship game tonight. UConn, Purdue. They have star players. They have NBA players, but they have core guys. They have a roster. They have a program. Kentucky's not a program right now, which is weird to say. They're not a program. They are it's just an NBA. They're a G League team, and they're not a good team. They're just they have great players. But Purdue, that's a hell of a team. UConn, that's a hell of a team, and we're going to see that really late tonight. Maybe the first half, but if you stay up really late, if you're a night owl like me, you will see 2 really good teams. And I don't know the last time Kentucky was built or looked like Purdue or UConn as far as being a legitimate team. Houston, I love the way Houston's built. Like, Kentucky has to find a way to be built like a Purdue, a Houston, a UConn, but still blending in those NBA guys. I don't know who can come in and do that. One guy that they're really looking at, according to the Vegas odds, if you will, Hurley's one of those guys
right.
as well.
Absolutely. Why not go get the hottest guy out there, the guy that's building programs and getting guys to stay in school and finding hidden gems? Absolutely, they should dial him up. You're talking about the national championship game tonight. Tips off at 9:20. Obviously, you know, folks listen to the show know I'm doing that 75 hard challenge. So my alarm clock goes off at 5 a.m. so I can get my lazy butt to the gym and start these workouts. It's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough. I'm definitely going to watch the first half. But halftime, I'm not sure I'm going to make it past halftime. I want to stay up and catch one shining moment. I don't know. I think this is the game that everybody wanted to see. I mean, these have been the 2 best teams all season long. These are 2 teams that I had meeting in the championship game. I really need UConn win so I can win my bracket over Ryan Drake because he has Purdue winning. So who you got?
I'm going for Purdue because I hate everything about UConn now. I love Hurley, but Diana Taurasi and Rapinoe's wife, I'm done with the UConn program. I'm done. I watched them jealous women. All right, ruin the UConn basketball for me. I was going for UConn until I watched that garbage the other night. I watched them. They're just petty. They have petty. I'm going to be petty.
You're Mr. Petty.
Go Purdue. Go
Just
Purdue.
Petty Kenner.
Go Boilermakers.
That is
go
your
Zach
MO.
Edey.
That is you.
Leave
How many times?
Leave my girl Caitlin Clark alone.
How many times have the Bengals caught strays on this program?
Oh, we haven't gotten petty yet. We're just getting warmed up. We're just getting started.
How many times has the Flyers caught strays and Coach AG have caught strays from Kenner?
He deserves it. The Bengals deserve it from time to time.
Coach AG, I can't wait to interview you one day, man. I know it's gonna happen.
I tell you, I'll make the Flyers a deal. I'll take that day off. If Anthony Grant, if he will do an interview with Kev Nash, I will gladly take that day off, or at least take that segment off.
It would be the best interview Coach AG has ever done.
For one,
it's gonna be a good time.
It will be a good time.
It's gonna start off like, how can you have such a crispy hairline at your age? No offense. But I mean, he's 50 plus years old and that hairline. I'm just praying to the heavens that I keep a hairline when I'm that age.
Then you ask him about his hairline, and then I'm going to be like, Coach, why is your offense so damn boring? How do you have one tournament win to show for having a roster over the years of Jalen Crutcher, Obi Toppin, obviously Tumani Kamara, obviously Deron Holmes, and then what are you going to ask him next? So that would be my question. Then what would be your follow-up?
How do you blend your NBA coaching prowess with the college game, because these are two totally different games? I mean, the NBA is a spread them out, shoot a whole bunch of threes. The college game is more structured and the coach is more in charge of the situation. How do you blend your NBA thought process in the college game? And then after he'd answer that, and he'd be answering very normal, and then he'd be like, then I'd ask him, Coach, when are you going to grow the cojones to play Wright State? And then after he answers that, then what are you going to ask him? That's a very good question. I'm not even going to lie. I would love to ask that question. But you would ask him, why don't you have the cojones to play Wright State? I would not ask him in that. I would not ask him in that tenure. I would ask him in a very different way. I was like, now, Coach, I got to admit, I'm a Wright State grad. I would love for you guys to play my alma mater. Do you see that happening anytime during your tenure? See, this is the same question, but just geared toward the different angle. It's the same question. Same exact question. I'm not kissing the ring. I wouldn't kiss the ring. Every other media member in town does. It's a different angle. It's angles. You got to have creativity, Kenner. So let's see. What else would I ask him? Let's see. How come he doesn't, get more Ohio guys on Dayton's team? There's so much talent in Dayton. How do you let Cups go? How do you let House get out of this city? How do you let so much talent leave this city? As far as that's concerned, that'd be what I ask him next. Then I'd be asking him, how come you don't know how to use timeouts? How come you don't know how to drop plays coming out of timeouts? That's what I mean. I'm a couple. I was selfish and I hogged a couple straight questions, and I didn't let you. I was back-to-back questions by Kenner that was uncalled for. I should have let you have the next one. But I think that's all the time we have for Coach Anthony Grant on today's show. Probably. But I kid you not. Anyone listening with the Flyers, I will not take part in that interview. It could just be Kev Nash and AG. Man, it would be awesome. We'll get a new graphic. It won't even be the Kenner and Kev show that day. It will be the Kev Nash show that day. He will not have to worry about me at all. I will ask Coach, how many guys on the team could you still beat in a game of one-on-one? I'm putting it pretty high. He does look good for his age. I'm telling you, man. Like, how do you stay in such good shape? I gotta know. He does look good for his age. How old is he? I think he's double nickel. Every year, like when they play on ESPN, they always show like a clip of him of his playing days, playing for Coach Donaher. And I swear to God, I feel like that picture was taken just a few weeks ago. Like, Coach is 57 years young. Yeah, he looks good for 57. Vampire. Horrible, plays out of timeouts. Horrible offense. Hey, but if you look that good at that age, what does it matter? He just spends more time. I'm a vampire, baby. Yeah. AG, I'm telling you, I will take the day off. I'll take the day off. You can hang out with my guy, Kev Nash. Chatterbox Sports, 1410 ESPN Radio. Then I'll ask him, can he give me some tickets to an Alabama football game since he's the coach down there? Maybe Kentucky will take him. Maybe he'll go to Kentucky. Take some of that 60 points a game over in Kentucky. Aye. Kenner and Kev, 1410 ESPN Radio. Casey, my bad, dude. You still have us live on Chatterbox. I apologize, dude. I thought we were only going to 5. We had to go till 6. We're just a little late today because the old clips staring into the sun. How's the retina? Retinas are good, man. Actually, I'm more worried about my vision from the lights in the studio. Like, I feel like I need these for the lights. So we have a portable sauna at the house, and
Portable sauna.
Yeah. So I sit in our sauna 30 minutes 3 times a week. This studio feels like the sauna with these lights. We're gonna start opening some windows around this place.
Your light's closer to you than mine.
Woo!
But see, I'm fat,
I'm
so
glistening.
I'm fat, so I'm always sweating.
You can see me on the camera. I'm like glistening over here. Sauna vibes.
Kenner and Cav, 1410 ESPN Radio. Kenner, what if Anthony Grant goes to Kentucky? Then I'll cheer on the Flyers. And you guys don't want that, I'm telling you. Actually, he would get NBA guys to go there. Look, he's very good at the recruiting aspect. He would do very, very well. But who do you think gets that? By the way, so Calipari did say he was keeping an eye on that Ohio State job when it opened up.
I'm straight.
I would have loved that.
I'm straight. I mean, we've been going out in the first round with Chris Holtman. Might as well just help Chris Holtman if we're going to be going out in the first round.
This is how crazy we are as fans, folks. We sitting here actually saying, I'm straight. We don't need Calipari. That's what Kev Nash says.
I'm straight.
I'm good because I like Jake Diebler now, but let me put it this way. If they hadn't hired Diebler and Calipari wanted the job, I would pick Calipari.
But you love the splash.
I do. I'm
all about
the splash, not 60 points a game. I'm all about the flair. I'm all about the 90 points a game, like my Wright State Raiders. I shout out the Raiders, 90 points a game. That's how you get done. Because they didn't make the tournament.
yeah,
2 years in a row.
I was going to say that, but that's my school, so I don't want to bash my school.
Wright State and Dayton, since Anthony Grant has gotten here, have the same. Actually, Wright State has played in more tournament games, and they have the same amount of tournament wins as Anthony Grant and Dayton.
Where Wright State get their win at?
At UD Arena.
Okay.
Let's go Raiders. Going throughout the arena. But no, nonetheless. But no, who do you think gets that job? The field or
the field?
I don't think. I think,
especially if they win tonight, Hurley's not going nowhere. If they
what's
win
more
tonight,
unlikely, Bob Huggins or Hurley?
Hurley.
That's more unlikely than Huggins.
You said unlikely or more likely?
What's more unlikely?
Oh, way more unlikely that Bob Huggins is.
So but Kentucky needs a splash hire, right? Like who's a former? By the way, Duke has a lot of former players that like it made sense for them to go the right. Who's that former Wildcat that you could slide?
They're all
in there?
still playing.
Yeah. But see, that's the other problem too. Kentucky, all those NBA players, that's all NIL potential. Like as far as donating back. I mean, one reason that Ohio State basketball too is a lot of those former NBA players that like were tired of seeing the Buckeye basketball program kind of down in the dumps. The reason that NIL has popped back up for the Buckeyes is because a lot of those guys have started chipping in a little bit of money for the basketball side. Like Anthony Davis, think of all those Kentucky basketball players. They're going to be Razorback fans now because those guys are Calipari guys. Now, I'm not saying all those guys will never donate $1 to Kentucky. I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying, like every dollar that goes to Arkansas because of those guys, that's dollars that is not going to Kentucky, even if some money is being trickled over there too. I do like Auburn's coach a lot. I think that would be an interesting one if they went that direction. I know he's a little, interesting. Being involved, having, some run-ins with the NCAA in the past, but Bruce Pearl would be a hell of a name to keep an eye on. As far as that's concerned, I know some people, Rick Pitino.
Pitino coming back again, eh? I would say Kevin Sampson from Houston will be on my list.
That's a good one. I didn't think. But a lot of every name that's thrown out there, controversy.
Sampson,
but you're not wrong.
Yeah. Calipari had controversy as well. I mean, dating back to. Like I talked about earlier at UMass, he had situations going on with the recruitment of Marcus Camby. Obviously, the whole situation with Derrick Rose at Memphis. So it ain't like they're not used to coaches that had a little baggage with them. I mean, Rick Pitino had a little baggage when he first started there as well. So that's nothing to them. They'll be perfectly fine. But Sampson will be high on my list. If maybe. What's Gonzaga? Gonzaga coach, maybe.
He would be the only one that doesn't have baggage as far as that's concerned. But whoever, they're going to have to.
A couple Deweys.
Few did?
Yeah.
He had a few?
Couple
few too many?
Yeah.
Those jokes are totally unoriginal. I guarantee you those have been used before. Mark, few too many. That's
What about all? He doesn't have a connection there. No, yeah. I mean, shoot, what? Yeah, Scott Drew from Baylor.
That can make sense. They just locked him in. He got a big raise. What job just recently? Oh, the Louisville job.
Yeah.
But Louisville's not Kentucky. Louisville's a good basketball job. I'm surprised. I mean, I'm surprised I didn't get more play. I think Louisville actually got a very good coach, though. So, yeah, I mean, Kentucky's an interesting
Baylor
one.
just won the national championship like 3 years ago.
So, yeah, Coach Drew will be in on that, too. Bruce Pearl, keep an eye on. I don't think they're going to get Hurley, especially if they win tonight.
Yeah, if they win tonight.
It's like I've created a dynasty here.
He's trying to go for if they get tonight, there's no way I would leave. Gonna get a raise if they win tonight. And then the fact that, hey man, we could potentially do something that hasn't been done in college basketball since like the 60s.
Yeah.
And go for a threefer.
But okay. Well, we'll keep an eye on this. By the way, Reds fans, Jonathan India out of the lineup tonight. So when I said earlier, you could take a deep breath. That's what I get for reading a tweet instead of just having an original thought. But Jonathan India out of the lineup tonight. Your updated lineup, Fairchild. We'll get the start in right field and bat first. Spencer Steer in left field will bat second. Batting third and at first base is Christian Encarnacion Strand. In the cleanup spot will be Candelario. He'll get the start at third base. Batting fifth and behind the plate tonight will be catcher Tyler Stevenson. Shortstop Ilya De La Cruz will bat sixth. Espinal will bat seventh, and he'll get the start at second base. Benson will be the designated hitter. He'll bat eighth, and then Thompson, the center fielder, will bat ninth with Ashcraft on the mound. Fairchild, Steer, and Strand, your 1, 2, and 3 hitters. 4, 5, and 6 belong to Candelario, Stevenson, and De La Cruz. Espinal, Benson, and Thompson. 7, 8, and 9. 6:10 coverage begins. 6:40 first pitch. Right here on Dayton's Radio, home of the Reds. 1410 Wing AM. All right. We're done on our Chatterbox YouTube channel. Casey, thank you. Appreciate you guys as always. We'll be back at it again on Chatterbox tomorrow, starting at 3 o'clock on the dot. So there's that. When we come back, Keith Byers is going to come hang out with us in studio. We'll chat with him for a little bit. We'll get his thoughts on Dallin Hayden entering the transfer portal. Also, curious his thoughts on the change where the OHSAA to now allow 7-on-7. Curious with him being a former coach, a former player, his thoughts on that. We'll get all of that coming up with Keith Byers when we come back. Kenner and Kev, 1410. ESPN Radio.
JB.
And producer, 5'11". From Blanchester, the Cow Killer, Casey McCollister. And comic engineer, standing at 4'8", the pride of the West Side, Elliot Rearing. And your host, weighing 150 pounds, soaking wet from Hamilton, Ohio, Ace Fowler.
Welcome in to a special day, a solar eclipse day of Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. I'm Trace Fowler. As always, joined by everybody in the room. I got accused last week, gentlemen, of saying everybody's names except for Lindsay. So I'm going to embarrass her right now and say that it's Lindsay Davis because she didn't think that I knew her last name. Although when she sends an email, it says Davis right in the middle of the email. So Reed Mouse, welcome. Hey. Lindsay Davis, welcome. Hey. Elliot Rearing, welcome. And Casey McCollister, welcome.
Hey, Trace.
You know, when it rains, it pours. And what I mean by that is you sit up here at this desk sometimes and you wonder, what are we going to talk about? What in the world do you talk about today? There's nothing that happened yesterday in sports. There's not a whole lot of new topics to talk about. And then this weekend hits. And you find yourself looking down at the list of headlines that Elliot will get to in just a minute.
Sure.
And you realize that there's just a plethora of things to discuss. So much so that the Reds, if that's something you're interested in, will be towards the back end of this show. Why? Because college basketball dominated this weekend, and mostly women. That's been, quite frankly, the talk of sports. National headlines has been centered around women's college basketball, and rightfully so. It's been entertaining, and it's not just Caitlin Clark. You have UConn, who's been a dynasty for years and years and years. You have a legacy coach in Gino Auriemma, and then you turn around and you have a program that has been the top of the echelon, if you will, in South Carolina. They are undefeated. Staley's is an unbelievable coach, and I'd be interested to see, and we'll have this discussion later, that maybe she doesn't throw her name in the ring of the fire of who's going to take over the UK job. Because late last night, news broke, of course, that John Calipari seems that he is